refers to government actions and policies that restrict or restrain international trade, often done with the intent of protecting local businesses and jobs from foreign competition. 1 is correct. Tariffs. The tax or duty that raises the price of imported products and causes a contraction in domestic demand and an expansion in domestic supply. 2 is correct. The intellectual property laws protect domestic producers. Since intellectual property laws raise prices, they can reduce the global movement of intellectual goods. For example, USA accuses India of creating a protectionist intellectual property regime in the pharma sector that is deterring U.S. investment in the South Asian nation, thus restraining trade and competition. 3 is correct. Hike in visa fee is a discriminatory step that would hurt the interest of foreign companies operating in that country. For example, India's 3 biggest IT companies, Infosys, TCS, and Wipro, roughly employ around 15,000 people each in the U.S. These companies rely heavily on H-1B visa workers as the salary demanded is less. A hike in visa fees can be considered a tax on business for companies hiring non-U.S. nationals, which would therefore prefer to hire U.S. citizens, thus protecting jobs of U.S. citizens. Q33. The Siddhanta Shiromani, Bhaskarakaryan Salvasutra, Bhattayaganik Sarasangrihad, Mahavakaryan Bhaskarakaryan was the leading light of 12th century. He was born at Bijapur, Karnataka. He is famous for his book Siddhanta Shiromani. It is divided into 4 sections: Lilavedi arithmetic, Vihaganic algebra, Kalabhyaya sphere, and Grihagonic mathematics of planets. Bhaskara introduced Chakravarti method for the cyclic method to solve algebraic equations. This method was rediscovered 6 centuries later by European mathematicians, who called it the inverse cycle. In the 19th century, an Englishman, James Taylor, translated Lilavedi and made this great work known to the world. Mahavakaryan. There is an elaborate description of mathematics in Jain literature 500 BC -100 BC. Jain gurus knew how to solve quadratic equations. They have also described fractions, algebraic equations, series, set theory, logarithms, and exponents in a very interesting manner. Jain Guru Mahavakaryan wrote Ganik Sarasangrihad in 858 which is the first textbook on arithmetic in present-day form. The current method of solving least common multiple LCM of given numbers was also described by him. Thus, long before John Napier introduced it to the world, it was already known to Indians. Bogdayan was the first one ever to arrive at several concepts in mathematics, which were later rediscovered by the Western world. The value of pi was calculated by him. Q34. Bihar 1 is not correctly matched. Dadgam National Park, located in Jammu and Kashmir, is popular as the home of the critically endangered Hangul or Kashmir stag. Pair 2 is correctly matched. Kanha National Park is one of the largest parks in Madhya Pradesh. The park is known globally for saving the Bursingham from near extinction. Pair 3 is not correctly matched. Fawn QE National Park is one of the 2 national parks of India in Mizoram, the other and the larger being Merlin National Park. It is a natural home of a wonderful range of bird life, including the rare blight Stragapan, falcon, sunbirds, dark-rumped swift, and Mrs. Hume's pheasant, which is a Mizoram state bird, and also rare animals like the mountain goat, slow loris, tiger, leopard cat, sorrow, goral, Asiatic black bear, stump-tailed macaque, and cat fluncorn. Q35. The budget consists of 2 types of expenditure charged upon the Consolidated Fund of India and the expenditure made from the Consolidated Fund of India. The charged expenditure is non-votable by the Parliament, i.e. it can only be discussed by the Parliament, while the other type has to be voted by the Parliament. The charged expenditure includes the emoluments and allowances of the President and other expenditure relating to his office. 9. www.visionis.in Copyright Vision IAS. The salaries and allowances of the Chairman and the Deputy Chairman of the Council of States and the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the House of the People, debt charges for which the Government of India is liable including interest, sinking fund charges and redemption charges, and other expenditure relating to the raising of loans and the service and redemption of debt. The salaries, allowances and pensions payable to or in respect of judges of the Supreme Court. The pensions payable to or in respect of judges of any high court, the salary, allowances, and pension payable to or in respect of the Controller and Auditor General of India, CAT Chairman and members of Union Public Service Commission, UPSC. Administrative expenses of the Supreme Court, Art 146(3), the Office of Controller and Auditor General of India, Article 148(6), and the Union Public Service Commission, including the salaries, allowances and pensions of the persons serving in these offices, are 322. Any sums required to satisfy any judgment, decree or award of any court or arbitral tribunal, any other expenditure declared by this Constitution or by Parliament I law to be so charged. Q36.c. Inflation tax. Inflation erodes the value of money, and the people who hold currency suffer in this process. Inflation tax is not an actual legal tax paid to a government. Instead, inflation tax refers to the penalty for holding cash at a time of high inflation. When the government prints more money or reduces interest rates, it floods the market with cash, which raises inflation in the long run. If an investor is holding securities, real estate or other assets, the effect of inflation may be negligible. If a person is holding cash, though, this cash is worth less after inflation has risen. The degree of decrease in the value of cash is termed the inflation tax, for the way it punishes people who hold assets in cash, which tend to be lower and middle-class wage earners. Q37.ARH factor is an antigen found on the surface of red blood cells. Red blood cells with the antigen are said to be Rh positive, Rh plus. Those without the surface antigen are said to be Rh negative, Rh. Blood used in transfusions match donors for Rh status as well as for blood group, as Rh. Patients will develop anemia if given Rh plus blood. Q38.E. All the statements are correct. Impact of economic policies of British rule in India. 1. The industrialization, decline of Indian handicrafts. In the 19th century, when most of the Western countries were witnessing industrialization, India was undergoing a period of industrial decline. India's traditional handicraft industry decayed beyond recovery. 2. Pluralization of Indian economy. With the industrialization, Indian economy tended to become more and more agricultural. Millions of manufacturing classes in industrial towns like Dhaka, Murshidabad, Surat and other places were rendered jobless and drifted from towns to villages for a livelihood. This increasing dependence of the population on agriculture for subsistence and slant of Indian economy on production of agricultural goods and raw materials, to the neglect of industrial development, has been described as trend towards ruralization or peasantization of Indian economy. 3. Commercialization of Indian agriculture. So far agriculture had been a way of life rather than a business enterprise. Now agriculture began to be influenced by commercial consideration, i.e., certain specialized crops began to be grown not for consumption in the village but for sale in the national and even international markets. For the Indian peasant, commercialization seemed a forced process. 4. Beginning of foreign business investments in India. The unfortunate development in India during the colonial era was that the foreign capital entered India in a big way, but it was used by the colonial administration not for the development of colonial economy but for fuller exploitation of Indian resources. Q39.c. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, is a mega-regional economic agreement being negotiated between the 10 ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nations governments and their 6 FTA partners.